My name is Arun Jagtiani, and I'm a proud St. Martin. In a few short weeks, our country is going to be heading to the polls to elect 15 new members to Parliament, and I think the entire voting population could benefit from knowing a little bit more about who these candidates are. Over the next few days, I'm going to interview a few new faces and a few political veterans. So join me, St. Martin, let's talk politics. Welcome to another edition of Talking Politics with Arun Jagtiani. I'm joined today by someone who is no stranger to the political scene in St. Martin. She has probably the longest resume of anyone contesting this election. She is the former President of Parliament, the former Prime Minister, the former Leader of Government, and I'm sure I've missed out a lot of other things, the leader of the United Democratic Party, none other than Ms. Sara Wescott Williams. A pleasure to have you here,
Thank
Sarah.
you for having
so
me.
Much.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know, again, you're one of those candidates that stay busy all the time. You wear so many different hats within the community. So thank you. First things first, let's get straight into it. How's it feel to be back on the campaign trail so quickly?
It has to be done. Let me say that. In terms of the election is a fact. It's of course in January the 9th.
Yes.
And I have my very specific thoughts about having elections so frequently as we have been having them.
Yes.
But fact is that on the 9th of January, persons will be called to vote for their representatives.
Yes.
And like I always like to encourage persons, because there's a lot of skepticism in terms of going out to vote again, as many persons would say. And I encourage persons by telling them that not voting is also making a choice. And that choice is that actually you are deciding to have others decide who will represent you. Well said. So in terms of, so we're smack in the campaign. It's a short campaign, also considering that the Christmas season and the New Year's holiday fall in the campaign, in the midst of all of it. So exactly, and even that makes you and it makes us approach the whole campaign a little differently. The fact that we still have many economic issues on St. Martin that need to be addressed. Yes. The fact that we are in the season, in the Christmas season, the New Year season, our campaign is different than we normally would have a campaign. You don't want to be intrusive. You need to respect persons. And we know St. Martin. And regardless to how people view things the whole year through, once you come to Christmas, there's that still spirit of persons being very busy, you want to respect that as well. So those two factors have made it necessary for us to look at our campaigning differently. Yes, exactly.
Okay. Were you in favor of these elections?
No, I was not.
Okay.
I was not, and I have been since holding the position of Prime Minister. And at that time, that meant that as Prime Minister, I was responsible for deciding when to invoke this Article 59. That's the one that dissolved the Parliament.
Right.
And that is done by the government. So there's a whole discussion about that very article. But the fact is that it is in the hands of the government and the Prime Minister in particular. And during the period 2010-2014, you would recall that the first government that started out was changed in 2012. And then, and then you had a change in 2013.
Right.
Both times, under my prime ministership, the party that was no longer part of the government wanted elections, because recall that they were in the government with my party. Yes. And they wanted elections. So in 2012, the United People's Party, that basically was then the one exiting the government, they wanted election. And I was like, no, I do not believe Article 59 was written for that purpose.
Correct.
2013, the same thing. And then it was the NA, and they wanted election. And I maintained no. So that was, up until now, the only 4-year period of Parliament that we have had, and with the same members of Parliament.
And we thought that was unstable, and now we beg to go back to that almost.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, to your question, Then we had election in 2016, 2018, and now elections are upon us in 2020.
Yeah.
And I think that we need to guard against making that our system, namely that every year and a half to 2 years you'll have election. That's not what the system was meant for.
Correct.
And that means, in my opinion, that 59 is, and I want to put it mildly, I'm not going to say misused, but it's definitely not used correctly.
Well, I would say it seems like sitting prime ministers have been a little trigger happy with Article 59.
Yes.
And how easy is it to amend this?
Yeah, and of course, in the campaign, and even outside of the campaign, persons would ask political parties and political leaders, what are your focal topics? What are your priorities?
Sure.
And I will list some of those, the economy being one of them, but also the stability factor, because
Absolutely.
regardless of the message that we're bringing to the people in terms of the economy has our attention, the dump has our attention, traffic has our attention, immigration has our attention.
Right.
But if we don't address the issue of stability, we can accomplish nothing.
We cannot.
And that needs to be said, and it needs to be emphasized. Can something be done? Yes. Because this Article 59 is put there, smack, into our Constitution. It was taken over. So we sort of inherited that. We took it, but we inherited that. But there's nothing more to the 59 except to say that a government can dissolve Parliament. And an automatic consequence of that is then elections must be called. Furthermore, there's even a period stipulated during which elections must be called and a new parliament must sit. And that's a period of 3 months, 90 days.
Sure.
So that means, and why I emphasize the can, that a government at any time, regardless of the circumstances, could be
Prime Minister has that
ability and basically has that right. So I'm saying, fine, there is an argument to have an instrument in the event you have an impasse in Parliament to dissolve Parliament. So there is an argument, if you have an impasse in Parliament, to dissolve a Parliament. But we need to condition 59. We need to give an indication as to under what circumstances, when should there be a sort of a cooling off period, all of these things. So can it be changed? Yes, I believe it can be changed by conditioning. And with that I mean, put it in context. Put 59 in context. Right now, a decision, mind you, such a critical decision to dissolve the Parliament is issued by a simple decree of government, a decree like they would appoint a civil servant. It's not even a heavier measure. It's just a decree, as we call it, a simple decree of government. So there are a couple of things that can be done before we even start to discuss our electoral system. Should we change? Should we go over to an elected prime minister? You've heard these suggestions as well. But before we even go there, I think we should have that discussion as well. But before we even go there, I believe we should deal with the matter of the 59. Firstly, do we want to maintain it? I believe, again, as I said, that there's an argument to be had in terms of having that instrument, just in case.
Just in case.
Just in case.
Okay.
But it needs to be conditioned. It needs to be put in the right context. It cannot be so that a government, by a simple decision, any day, nothing really has to bring that about.
There should be more substance to it.
Exactly.
There should be more reason for that type of action.
If you have a parliament, and can such a situation exist? Yes. If you have a parliament like we do of 15 members, and no 8 of those 15 members can get together, form a government, and you have that just going on. You have an impasse. You have an impasse, and then
in that instance, of course,
exactly.
I believe that's what it was intended for.
Yes,
right.
Yes,
but it's been used. It's been used for different purposes or different agendas.
I am concerned that the way that we have used this article up until now, and habit is going to make it something that then we even forget what it was there for.
Correct.
And
so that addresses the concern of Article 59. But from what we've seen, what leads us to get to Article 59 has been the ship jumping.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
What can be done, and what can be done to minimize that possibility? Or
and there is, and that is a more contentious issue. And why? Because basic to that discussion is a very fundamental human right, actually. A fundamental human right. And that is the right to vote and the right to be elected. And once elected, the freedom of a member of parliament. In our local parlance, as we call it, we often hear the term voting, one should vote according to his or her conscience.
Sure.
That's not the way it's put in our constitution, but our constitution does say that a member of parliament must be able to vote without any pressure. Pressure from the outside, pressure from his or her, right, from the party, from his or her constituents, from interest groups, you name it.
But that's not the reality of the situation.
Exactly. It's not the reality of the situation. One, and that, how do you condition that right of a member of parliament in terms of saying, but you signed on to be with this party, you were elected with the party, you usually have agreed with the party to a governing program.
Sure.
And so you should not just be allowed to up one day to another, not given any argument or explanation, and as we would call it, jump ship.
Yeah, are you in favor of those seats staying with the party once elected? Because in many cases, you have people that get in with, a low amount of votes that if they were on another political party, they would not be sitting there.
Yeah.
And sometimes you see people who just miss getting a seat. They may have, pulled 500-600 votes in some cases and still be on the sidelines.
Exactly.
Right. Meanwhile, you have somebody with 100 or 200 votes that has tremendous amount of influence because they got that seat based up from other people in their party pulling the lion's portion. And
that possibility that is there, so-called based on this right of the individual, we call it a free mandate, meaning that man or woman, once elected to parliament, can do what he or she pleases, based on the fact of this free mandate.
It makes us very vulnerable.
It does.
Yeah.
And
the whole system.
And it can be conditioned, and without taking that right away, we should be able, even on the basis of having an agreed to, some would suggest a notarized governing program to which all are committed. And once the government is in accordance with that program, no change in parliament would actually send the government home. So these are some of the things. So while I have understanding for this free mandate, and even that to me, we should have a further discussion about, but I think there's some things,
right? Like as long as the party is sticking to what they said they were going to do.
That's right.
You can't.
Because what we have seen is that this ship jumping is usually done to make another government constellation happy. It happens, It has never really been, well, I have such a fundamental difference with my party. My party is doing this, my faction is doing that.
Right.
So I have to leave. I can't associate myself. That has never been the issue on St. Martin's up until now.
The perception definitely from, my observation is personal agendas.
Yes.
It seems like it's always a personal agenda that's being served. And sometimes
shown to be exactly that.
We may not understand those agendas, but the indication is it is a personal reason.
And again, so very, very important for the United Democrats and for myself during this campaign is that stability factor, because I honestly believe that without addressing that, all that we're hearing, and with all the best will in the world, and parties, those who have been there are saying what they will continue to do, those who would like to be there are telling you what they will do. But if we do not address that stability factor, it's for naught.
Is that your top priority if elected again?
Yes. Because more and more you see that this is not helping the country. The way that we are being governed because of that stability factor is not helping the country. And we look at the calling of the election and we're like, oh my gosh, why would you call election so soon? But imagine that same right was used to call election only a few months following the hurricanes of 2017.
That was an election I was also strongly opposed to.
How more insensitive could you as a government be?
Correct.
To, but it happened because the 59 is there, the government could have done it, and they did it.
Right.
So I don't see what would be such a major issue on St. Martin that a government would say, wow, although we feel we should call election, given the circumstances, we will not. Because following the hurricane, if that was not a consideration, I don't see what would be a consideration not to call election, not to dissolve Parliament, and thereby not invoking Article 59. So yes, it is extremely, in my opinion, again, stability is extremely important. And that's why the United Democrats carry the slogan of the stabilizing factor, because we really want to be that stabilizing factor.
Talk to me about UD, United Democrats. Yes. So this party came together as a merger of the United People's Party, the Democratic Party. You guys came together for the last election, right after the right after the hurricane, probably the worst time, but 2018. So my understanding, the merger came because there was a similarity in views, and also to consolidate expenses, overhead, all of that.
Everything that goes with it, yeah.
The UD still stands strong. They're contesting the election. However, the merger it seems to have imploded.
Yeah,
talk to me about that.
In fact, it was not really a merger of the two political parties.
Okay.
So what you did have was a coming together of the leader of the United People's Party, the UP, and the leader of the DP. So very specifically, and that's how the articles of incorporation for the party were drafted. It was Theo Heiliger and Sara Wescott. That's how it is. So not the DP and the UP.
Okay.
It came together for very clear reasons, and the most important one being, as you indicated, to come together, to put aside the pettiness and differences and look at the reconstruction of St. Martin.
Yes.
A few months out of the hurricanes, and we were and we had to sort of rush this merger, if I can use that word, in order to contest the election. But we felt it was important to come together, to unite, and many of the persons, including, especially then I must say, Theo Heiliger and Sara Wescott, we came from the Democratic cloth.
This is correct.
We came from the DP.
Correct.
The DP with its history and its vision for St. Martin going back many, many years.
Decades,
so that foundation was still very much present. So in coming together, the two of us coming together and forming the United Democrats and the United Democratic Party, with a focus on the reconstruction of St. Martin, we drafted a governing program with very, very clear items, and the prioritizing of these items in terms of the rebuilding of St. Martin, but also with the vision that the minute we got to that level of rebuilding, we could then focus on a more long-term plan for St. Martin.
So what went wrong?
I think a lot of it had to do with the absence of Theo. A lot of it had to do when Theo got into his legal issues, and then understandably said, how could I lead this party?
Right.
And how could I lead this party when at that time he was actually physically not on the island? And
Correct.
He's like,
he had health issues, legal issues.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that was his resignation from the party, because of the short time that we had to put that party together.
Right.
Things like having a Congress and a membership had not really taken place. So what you had was this party, Theo obviously leading the party, Sara obviously the deputy leader, and then we had a faction of 7 members in the parliament.
Yes.
So the management of the party and the structure was not that strongly in place. Exactly. And it was not that strongly in place because we in fact the notarizing of the party was like the day, maybe 2 days before, we actually had to present, because remember, your party needs to be registered officially as an association, as a party.
Correct.
So we were like rushing against time in order to get that in.
At the last minute.
And at the last minute, which we did. And then all the focus was on the campaign, of course.
Yes.
So we ran the campaign, we got into government. It was about, you know, St. Martin at its lowest, the whole issue that became an issue of the trust fund and the money.
Sure.
And do we accept it, do we, etc., etc. So many things. And then you had, as I mentioned, Teo's situation, which had a great impact. And then I had to step in and basically pick up the leadership of the party.
So it sounds like one of the consequences of a snap election is parties don't necessarily have the time to form a solid base. Like you mentioned, they couldn't have the Congress amongst yourselves. You couldn't have certain enough time to bond, let's say, and make sure all values are in line.
Yes.
Do you think your party is faced with that same challenge now, or how confident are you on your list that you're coming forward with?
Quite confident. Quite confident
this time, right? So you're down to 11 this time, right?
We're down to 11 this time, but amongst that 11 are several incumbents. So persons who were committed to the governing program of the United Democrats. And so we have the knowledge, we have the experience, and I believe with the list we have the commitment. And we are now we were able, it's still what they call a snap election, but we were able to do some of the things that we should have done before in terms of have a Congress. This was held just last Saturday. You know, get a complete board going. So all of these things we felt it was necessary, even in the campaign, to put together.
So I follow the politics from the sidelines. I don't read the details or whatever. I guess like most people, I more read the headlines. And I try to follow what's going on. And there are times when it gets very frustrating, and times it's very confusing. Sometimes I think I understand what's going on, and then it's something completely opposite happens. Perfect example. Minister Emily. I'm almost at a loss of words. I don't know what question I'm trying to ask, but I'm just confused at what happened there.
Arun, this is a prime example of members of parliament getting carried away with the knowledge and conclusion that they have the government and to a certain extent the parliament in the palm of their hands. That's what it was. And so let me explain you this particular case. And I have not seen it up until now happen anywhere else. I have not seen it. So we had a governing program, and amongst other things, because that goes back some years as well, the construction of a new hospital has been not only on the program of the DP, the UP, the UD, you name it. We have seen elections. Exactly. We have seen elections where you had big billboards of a new hospital, etc., etc. So it was also part of this governing program, a program signed off differently than is usually the case by all the members of the coalition. Every individual member affixed his or her signature to that program. So we're working on it. And then in this case, the former member of the UD, Dr. Marcelina, he then picked up this notion that he is not in favor of a hospital. That's one part. And another very important, and this matter is important in this election for me, and I hope we have the opportunity to go into it a little, and that's healthcare. So for some years, the discussion has been ongoing regarding universal healthcare for the population. That is another important item. However, against these two issues, so the MP Marcelina, was against these two issues.
So he's against the new hospital.
And
against a national health care. Okay.
So he brought this forward in the coalition, and the rest of the coalition was not in agreement with his views.
Okay.
At some point, he determined that former Minister Emily must be sent home. and the coalition, just as I'm saying it, he must be sent home. And the other coalition members, so the member of the SMCP, the Christian Party, and his 7 colleagues of the UD were like, we cannot support you in this.
Correct.
And his response was, well, then I'm going to get it done with the opposition. And it took some time, and we realized there were movements in that direction. And I guess when the time was convenient for them, that's what happened. Where I indicated that I have never seen a development such as this without political implications. Because the minute that happened, there was that break of trust. Imagine one of your members of the coalition joined with the opposition, got rid, so to speak, of a minister of the coalition, and the coalition kind of just took it. And we tried to continue. But there was more behind that move, we realized subsequently, you know, and that was to get to a position where basically more than one minister must have gone.
This is another one that confused me. Then Mr. Myers withdrew his support of the government. I think he later retracted that statement. I'm not sure. Again, I just read the headlines and don't, it gets confused. It gets confusing at a certain point, and that
just like it is for you, it is for the people of St. Martin, really. You know, I mean, persons come to me, and as I go to them in this campaign, even before, they're like, what happened there? And then you try to explain it without becoming too technical, you know, and going into the articles of the Constitution and the motion of no confidence, etc. But what happened, so remember, we were at a point, and Teo with his issues, Teo deciding I can't lead this party, Sarah stepping up to the plate, although the structure was not really what it should have been. Then we decided to assist me, Frankie would become the faction leader. So Frankie became responsible for the other members in parliament. And then you got these moves taking place, and you got these subtle threats within our own coalition. And at some point in time, Frankie actually threw his hands in the air. I mean, like, actually, I can't take this, because if every week I have to try and figure out, oh my God, who's now going to come and try to find an argument to get rid of one of our ministers? And he threw up his hands. But what you refer to in terms of him retracting, what he did say, so basically he said, I can't support what is going on with the government. So I pull my support, but I'm willing to work with you, my colleagues. So what he actually did, pulled himself from the construct of the UD, you know, and said, but I need to work with you. But he could no longer responsibly carry the responsibility for the faction.
Interesting. Okay.
So then, and that then gave the 2 other members the opportunity to execute what, in my opinion, they had been planning all along, and that was to join with the others and then form another government.
Okay. You mentioned you wanted to talk about national health care. Please tell me. Question is, who's going to pay for it? I guess. And well, I guess it entails medical insurance for everybody.
At least a basic package of medical coverage for everybody. The number is, Arun, and it needs to be verified, but the number is, and has been for some years, that around 30% of our population has absolutely no health coverage.
35%?
30%, yes, around 30%. This was so bad years ago that actually, because what happens, those persons who are uninsured still ended up, especially by the St. Martin Medical Center, and they could not be refused care. So what happened, the St. Martin Medical Center, based on especially that reason, built up a huge debt, and they had to be bailed out by the government of St. Martin. Bailed out. They couldn't pay their taxes. They owe, you know, and they had to be bailed out. So it is better to take up these persons and let them contribute to the system than just being out there and, you know, when
showing up for emergencies.
And what happens, there's another part to that, because when you don't have the coverage, you don't seek medical attention in time. You know,
yes.
and especially again, if we take it,
better than cure.
if we take it after the hurricane season, you had where a lot of persons lost their job, and by losing their job, they didn't have any medical coverage. By just making a small amount, you know, their first thing is to be able to live. You know, and again, their health became secondary. When I mentioned this last night to someone, they said even tertiary, and I agree. You know, on the third place. And so the necessary prevention was also not in place.
Sure. And this, I would imagine a big portion of people that show up without medical coverage are undocumented people on the island, or is that a different segment altogether, a different demographic?
And others, because our health insurance system right now is so fragmented. In addition to that, if you couple that with the fact of us not having all available care here on St. Martin, and I don't believe we will ever have all, because there are some specialties that you're not going to have here for 2-3 persons a year. However, not having some of the even basic care to be able to offer here, Arun, the figure rather, that we spend in referring persons abroad is anywhere between, is astronomical. Is it in the tens of millions, hundreds of millions? It's in the tens of millions. And the last number that I heard thrown out was 36 million guilders a year.
Wow.
That is not taken,
half the cost of the hospital almost.
That is not taken into consideration the psychological effects of having persons go abroad. They're taken out of you know, out of the country.
And
family members have to travel, and you know, so
yeah, that's true. The mental strain
exactly.
That creates,
so the universal health care, and then of course we need to tweak it. We need to see, where do you get a break-even point? You know, if there's not a break-even point, who takes care of the difference? But at least we should have that discussion, because while you know, you're going to have premiums involved, just like you have premiums involved now. Is it going to be more? Is it going to be much more? How large is it going to be?
Right. But how do we pay? So I completely agree in the need for everyone to have medical coverage. But a concern that I have as a business owner is the business community is already overtaxed.
Exactly.
So how do we cover this bill?
And you know, and it brings me to another important part for us of the United Democrats, of the campaign as well. And that is that matter, for example, cannot be tackled in isolation. We cannot tackle the matter of universal healthcare for everyone in isolation without looking at it from the bigger perspective. And the bigger perspective meaning we need to look at all of the stakeholders. We need to look at the economy of St. Martin. And at the end of the day, it might be like right now is the case, Arun. Right now, the system of insuring family members of undocumented workers, because they need insurance, they're working. And the system of insuring their family members has a clause in it that if that system is running in red, the government needs to fill it on. The government needs to contribute X amount per head. So we need to create some balance between premiums, a contribution from the government, you know, and to come up with a package that the country can sustain. The country being the business sector, you know, the workers. So and that requires a discussion. But central to that discussion should be an agreement that we cannot continue in the way that we're going right now, because it's going to hit us in the face down the road. And once we determine that, then let's go work out the specific, taking the other aspects of our entire economy into consideration.
So one of the portfolios that was under your party in the last government was the finance. And I remember the Minister of Finance on many occasions spoke of introducing a new, or tax reform, introducing a new tax code. There was a big discussion on it in Parliament. I was eagerly awaiting to hear what this new tax code would be, but to my knowledge, it never made it to daylight, let's say.
No, it didn't make it to the kind of daylight that we could have sat down and have a discussion on this. This issue of tax reform.
Yes.
Arun and I have been in government for a long time, and definitely since we became country.
Yes.
And different ministers of finance have always underscored the need to deal with our tax system. Just like our healthcare system, the tax system is fragmented.
Yes.
It is outdated.
Completely.
You know, so that determination has always been there. The question is, how do you do it? Over the years, and the last one is somewhat like that as well, it's about, okay, fine, you know, we have, I wouldn't say a bad thing, we have not such a good thing, so let's get a new big system in place, you know, and with technology being at the forefront, etc., etc. But
comes with a price tag as well.
Exactly, it comes with a price tag, and there is so much cleaning up to do before you can put that to work. Yes. Otherwise, we'll be here in, I don't want to say in a mess, but we'll be here in a quandary while you're seeing a big, you know. So my preference, and with especially our minister, we have had this discussion. I have been able to talk to the person who the minister brought in to kind of put the things together so that when he presents us to the public, we can understand what are we saying, you know, besides saying that we need a complete new system, but what do you do with what we have right now, you know. And I think that government needs to take some decisions to say, well, we're going to deal with the portion for the last 10 years, we're going to deal with that so that we can start at some point, you know, because trying to bring it all along into this new system, I think, Arun, that
maybe
the next
do it in baby steps as opposed
in increments. We need to, and at the same time realizing that our economy is hurting. Yes, our economy is hurting, you know, and so we need to take that into consideration, and that's why again, and now I'm actually maybe to my third important point for the campaign. We need to be able to agree on some of the basic yet fundamental issues, you know, and then we move forward with them as a country. The stability thing, I think we need an agreement on that, because I can go and I can
you can have the best ideas,
you know, and I can go to parliament, and then and then they're gonna like, you know, and because she come with it, I am not, you know, that kind of thing. So let's agree, and everybody is in agreement. But the only thing is, depending on what side of the fence you are at a given time, it's like, I ain't touching ship jumping because I just got a ship jumper who come with me. You know what I'm saying? So we need to clear that hurdle and decide, guys, we need to do something. We cannot continue like this every year and a half, 2 years election. And I believe the tax system is something that we need to approach in that manner, because
it's suffered because of all the changes in government.
That for sure.
Absolutely.
And then ideas and proposals abound. But you know, so we need to kind of bring it all together and in a very sober way sit down and first of all decide we need to do something about it. We have talked too long about, you know, changing the system. We're going back to a former, you would remember, former Minister of Finance, Hiro Shigemoto.
Yes,
he introduced exactly that, and that big plan, you know. But I think, and it was taken from Great Britain at the time, not taken from, but exactly.
Yes. There was a consulting firm here from the
but
UK.
we need to be able to look at it ourselves, because nobody understands the dynamics of this economy of St. Martin. And you know, if you look around today, okay, and with all our the issues that we have and that we face, but there's still something about St. Martin, and I don't think anyone has been able to put their finger on it just yet, that actually keep us going, notwithstanding. But we don't know how long we would be able to.
Of course, at a certain point,
because
we haven't identified what that mojo is or whatever.
What it is, but it keeps us going. And when we think that nobody would be here on you know, would be coming to St. Martin, or would be here on St. They
showed up.
You go into restaurants and you hear, it's like, oh yeah, no, I heard about this country and I just had to get here, kind of thing. And I'm like,
so would you agree with this statement? It's a controversial statement for you because you've been in government this entire time. The island has moved forward despite government, not because of it. Post-hurricane.
The island has moved
forward.
You know,
despite government, not because of it.
I wouldn't agree to it. So black white.
Okay.
Despite many issues with the government, but there were some things that because of the government were able to move. You see what I'm saying?
Okay, yes,
you see what I'm
yes,
saying?
yes.
So I realize that government hasn't
There's been some
necessarily
credit
helped.
owed.
Yes,
There's been
yes,
some
yes.
credit
I
owed to
wouldn't put
government,
it so black and white, like
Okay.
despite.
So to
but-
some extent, there's truth to that,
Yes,
but not
exactly,
across the board.
exactly.
Okay.
Yes, yeah,
Fair.
yeah. I would agree. There's definitely
Fair.
because I have seen some things happen and some things being done, and I like, oh my God,
Well, I
government.
think the business community, I think, has played a critical role in our recovery and in promoting the island. And with social media, you have so many different businesses, entrepreneurs, and just people on the island in general that have consciously posted positive things to keep us flowing.
For sure, and we often boast, and I think there is a great element of truth to that about the resiliency of all of us
Yes,
here.
very true. Very true.
And that's a fact. And
Yes,
that's a fact.
yes.
And persons come here and and we laugh and they're like, oh my gosh, all that you're going through,
Right.
but that's and that generates a certain
Sure.
a certain confidence, even though the confidence level in the government and what they do is low.
This is true. So, okay, we've got to wrap it up soon. I see my producer giving me the signal, but real quick, I wanted to ask you, back in 2014 or 2015, I was part of a group that gave a presentation to Parliament about the medicinal and recreational benefits of introducing marijuana or regulating the marijuana industry, the cannabis industry here on the island, because the industry is already on the island, right? It's just not regulated.
Yes, exactly.
I believe you were the president of Parliament at the time, or you were chairing the meeting. Forgive me if I'm mistaken, but you were definitely present in the meeting, and we engaged in dialogue. And I recall your position at the time. Again, it's going back 2014, 2015. You said you were open to the medicinal, but you wanted to do more research before commenting on recreational.
Yes.
Have you had time to do that research, and where do you stand on that issue now?
Truthfully speaking, Arun, no, not really. No, I haven't, and I always do exactly what I said I would have done in that case. Any topic, I believe, I can speak here with you for hours, but I like to be well informed, to really give content to a discussion. So going further than when we had that discussion, and unfortunately it had a lot to do with the changes that took place, with the elections and again, unfortunate because a topic like this, for example,
diversifies the economy, increases
and it shouldn't be something that is up for discussion today and then maybe put on a low burner, because in the meantime nothing happens, and we have seen that
an industry we're missing on,
and not only in this case but in so many different issues. This is what you see, and again, get a government with a program that would identify these topics and others, and let them work on it. Let them do what they set out, telling the people that we will do once elected.
So you personally are still on the fence for that issue, or have you?
I wouldn't say on the fence per se.
Okay.
But I would like to see a furtherance of the discussion on it to come to a conclusion for St. Martin. With all of the input, and the pros and the cons, I would really like to see us get into that and not just leave it there simmering until another group comes up and, say, pick it up, and a few members of Parliament run with it for a couple of months. And no, we gotta finish our story. We gotta finish our story.
Right. Thank you so much, Ms. Wescott Williams. You could continue going on for hours and hours, as you mentioned. But in the interest of time, I do have to listen to my producer and wrap it up. It's been an absolute pleasure. I wish you so much success on the campaign trail. Thank you so much. And in conclusion, I'd love to give you the opportunity to speak directly to the voters and send your message to encourage them to come out on January 9th.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity. Yes, January the 9th of the year 2020, an important year, 10 years of country status. And I want to encourage everyone. You have that right, make use of it. Go out and vote on January the 9th. Not voting is also a choice, but a choice meaning that others will decide for you who would then be elected to Parliament, who would be your representatives. So the United Democrats, I am making myself and my 10 other fellow candidates available to the people of St. Martin to be your representative come January 9, 2020.
But I wish you much success in the campaign trail.
Thank you.
Thank you to everybody who tuned in. We've got another episode coming at you tomorrow. As always, we welcome your feedback in the comment section below. See you guys tomorrow. My name is Arun Jagtiani, and I'm a proud St. Martin. In a few short weeks, our country is going to be heading to the polls to elect 15 new members to Parliament, and I think the entire voting population could benefit from knowing a little bit more about who these candidates are. Over the next few days, I'm going to interview a few new faces and a few political veterans. So join me, St. Martin, and let's talk politics.